You're very welcome back to Red Business in Focus with Cork's local enterprise offices, where we're sharing Cork's success stories. This week it's Beni Moussa of Bensons Menswear. He's in the spotlight and he'll be chatting to us about his successful business and his passion for textiles. We're also going to be talking to him about how they stepped up during COVID-19 to put the community first in their business by stopping production of regular stock and then focusing their efforts instead on hospital gowns for the HSE. Beni, you're very welcome, sir. How are you?
Thank you. Very well. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. As usual at the start, we've given you 30 seconds on the clock to tell us a little bit about the company. So 30 seconds, what do you do in Bensons Workwear?
Okay, my name is Beni Moussa. I'm a fashion designer. I'm also creative director at Bensons Corporate Wear. We design and manufacture corporate uniforms for banks, airlines, supermarkets, hotels across Ireland, the UK and France. We have a team of textile experts and fashion designers and graphic designers. And we are changing the design of uniforms, if you like, by bringing fashion to the workplace.
Okay, now that's interesting because workwear traditionally tends to be a little boring and functional, right? So we're going to get to how you're changing in just a minute. But first of all, how did you end up working in this space? It's a kind of it's a specific area, if I could put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up with 5 sisters. And so you can imagine the rest of the story.
I pretty much they used you as a fashion model, didn't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And tweaking dresses, and I was always inspired by fashion, what they wear, what they shop, and how they marry colors and so on. So it was really interesting upbringing. My mother was obviously doing a bit of seamstress in here and there, and then 2 of my sisters went into silk printing, which was fascinating, and they used to do that all by hand. At the age of 16, then I was still in school, obviously. I got an interest in business, so I started mixing the two, fashion and business and textiles and printing, doing a bit of everything. I ended up with an established business. It was doing very well, where I used to design and print and make myself, together with my 2 sisters, the bands for seatbelts. So we would print the car brands on the seatbelt.
Okay, so in other words, instead of just having a black seatbelt, you could put the brand on it and you could pimp it out effectively. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Like for sports car mainly.
Yeah.
So I used to run across markets and car dealers and stuff like that and sell them. That was back home in North Africa, and then that took off. But then that took about 3 to 5 years to take off and to be built. By the time I reached 19 and a half, I found myself in London and I had a whole world in front of me as a designer. So I started working in London, sourcing for factories, designing for different textile companies, where I spent 11 years, built a lot of knowledge, met interesting people as well throughout my career. And then I came to Ireland with, I suppose, a business plan to open a textile factory.
And it's a funny industry because it can be quite hard to turn a profit from it, because it's clothing at the end of the day, and it's fashion, which means you can be either in or out of fashion. When did you come up with the idea of creating durable, usable workwear? And I suppose branded workwear at that, because everybody likes to see their brand on their clothes.
Absolutely. I think when I was in London, definitely working and seeing, I suppose, what other people are making, what the possibilities are there, and seeing the gap in the market. And then mixing the knowledge that I gathered, making patterns, looking for the right fabric for certain sectors in the business. I thought, look, mixing the two will go hand on hand and very well. So by bringing the aspect of fashion into workplaces, be it a hospital, an airline, a bank, and so on, it can be as simple as schoolwear. Yeah. The two blended very well together.
One of the things about workwear, traditionally they would have been just functional. So in a hospital you had scrubs that could easily be washed, and then you might have a different colour for a different job in a hospital. They weren't particularly glamorous.
Yes.
That's changed now, hasn't it?
I agree. Yes, absolutely. All we know about, like, we're all used to, say, The workwear, as you said, a bit boring, a bit straight down. There's nothing fancy to it, nothing luxurious. When
One
it comes
size
to
fits all, kind of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I suppose the vision of Bensons corporate wear is to break that pattern and to start giving people or the staff or the employees really the feel of what it's like to put on something you love to work. So it brings out confidence, empowers the employee, and a happy employee means a happy company and a happy family in a company, and it brings out the best out of people.
Let's go to March 2020, when the world changed for everybody with the global pandemic. I would imagine that you were sitting there like every other business owner going, what is this going to mean for me and for my business? Are people going to want workwear? Are they going to want all this kind of stuff? It became quite apparent quite quickly that the health service needed help. So how did you move to help them?
Absolutely, Jonathan. I mean, just pre-pandemic, 2-3 months when we heard China was in trouble, in here I remember I called enterprise, local enterprise office here, Mr. Joe Burke, and I said, I've always been known to him, I'm this go get it, and I'm this positive guy.
Just get it done.
Get it done, and this positive guy. And now I said to myself, now positive man, what are you going to do? You know, there's no hotels, everything is shut down, there's no cafes, no restaurants. So we had to close for about 4 to 5 weeks while we were trying to pivot and get contracts in place with the HSE, because everything else, as you said, had stopped at the time. So we had to pivot very, very quickly, and that involved, when people were cocooning, we were in the factory in East Cork, cutting fabric, making patterns, responding to
So, as someone who was in the fashion sector,
yes,
you probably would never have deemed yourself an essential worker, but there you were, providing an essential service.
Absolutely, that's well said, Jonathan, because we had to actually request a letter from the HSE to allow us to be on the road, and we had we were taking care of production in one hand, and then recruiting up to 43 employees, most of them seamstresses, fabric cutters. Some had experience, and we were actually privileged and a bit surprised from the community and the response we got here in Cork. It was absolutely amazing. Everybody came together. As
the world is starting to straighten out now, Benny, what does that mean for your business? You obviously don't have to produce huge amounts of PPE and workwear for hospitals anymore, but what condition is the company in now to move forward, and where do you see growth for yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I do believe personally, as a creative director of Bensons Corporate Wear, this is the best of times. I know it can be the worst of times as well for certain businesses and small businesses that unfortunately had closed down or had to struggle throughout the pandemic. The best of times in the sense that the world is opened again. Every business is opened again. There's a lot of opportunities, and what the pandemic has done, I suppose, on a psychological level that I've witnessed for small businesses, be it a hotel or a large enterprise like airlines and so on, it has changed their behavior, if you like. Where what I mean by that is, people used to be, it's easier almost to go to the Far East and get something done and get your stuff imported, especially when it comes to the textiles. But then what the pandemic has done, it put a lot of pressure on delays. We all know that the logistics is 8 to 10 times more expensive now, which puts us as manufacturing in Ireland in a much stronger position. So we're able to respond and change the habits of those businesses.
And as the world changes then, Benny, does that impact on quality? Because if prices go up everywhere else and you're trying to produce your product, how is it going to be different to what's produced in other parts of the world?
Absolutely. I think as manufacturers here in Ireland, where we're heading is towards sustainability. So by manufacturing here in Ireland, we're already cutting down 40% of carbon. So without going into the details of sourcing fabric and the sustainable route for businesses, I think people will appreciate paying €1 or 2 more per garment if you're buying a suit. I think we all agree to support Irish businesses as one, and to support to save our environment as a priority as well.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure and a great journey. Beni Moussa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Now join us next week when we'll be joined by Carol Kendellen from Basel Market and Deli. Carol is going to fill us in on her successful business and will share her story about pivoting the food sector during COVID to develop the e-commerce side of the house. See you next week on Red Business in Focus with Cork's local enterprise offices.